colleagues and a very seasoned entrepreneur, a financial consultant, an investment banker. Um, oh, they just started recording today, so I'm going to do it again. Good evening, everyone. Today we have with us Jatin Srivastava. He's a good old friend and colleague of mine. He's a seasoned financial consultant, investment banker, worked with one of the best investment banking organizations in the world, JP Morgan Chase. He, I think, carries more than 16 plus years of experience into financial advisory, consulting, startup space, fundraising, and he's by profession, he's a chartered accountant. He also runs a company called Seth and Associates at Lucknow. He's also an academician. He's on board of advisors of so many companies, working on startups. I mean, I can go on and on. The introduction will not even end. Jatin is one person whose advice and whose inputs will really help you in terms of growing and taking your business to the next level. So thank you so much, Jatin, for sparing your time and joining us this evening. This is one of the Women Entrepreneurship Development Program which we are doing, supported by Government of Department of Science and Technology. So all these aspiring ladies are looking for some advice and tips from you, and I'm sure all of us will get a lot of benefit out of your session. So thank you so much, Jatin, and over to you.
Thank you so much for such a generous introduction. I'm just a small variable in a large pool of ecosystem that we have in the country.
People say like this.
So I'm just trying to do my small bits.
Window which is coming on your screen. I can see a black window on the screen.
Okay, can you see the first slide?
I can see the first slide. Also, I think it is a Teams window which is coming.
Okay, 1 second. I think I have to reshare.
Yeah, probably.
Let me reshare. Yeah, it's properly visible now.
Yeah, but that window is still coming.
Okay.
Did you share the screen or you shared desktop?
I've shared a screen actually.
Then it will come, I think, but probably there is network connectivity is low, so I can see a blank window. It's okay.
Oh, 1 second. Yeah, so I'll reshare again. Maybe then
if you share a desktop, then I'll be able to see the share desktop, and then that's okay. It's coming the same way.
Okay, let me close this and do it again. Yeah. Even my team is showing 2 windows. Okay.
So if you share desktop and go to presentation, it will show one window. How's Lucknow doing?
I think it's competing with the national landscape now on the corona cases. So, so every second day we get to hear something more.
Are you guys working from home, going office?
I think you will have to give me another permission again for sharing.
You already have permission. There's no problem.
It has showing that I don't have. I cannot click that. Organizer and presenters can only share.
But you log in using 2 IDs, is it?
No, this is the only login I have right now.
It is showing 2.
I don't know what exactly is
happening. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
can
can
say
share
two
now.
sentences
I
of
can
your.
share now. Once. So Lucknow is again, picking up on the number of cases, but economy-wise, I find everybody on the roads. So there's no work from home priority as such, and we have been going to office ever since the first lockdown got open. But in the middle, sometimes we had to close our offices. Even in Delhi, we had to close our office for some time, almost 3 months. We have to close down. But Delhi resumed a little later. In September, somewhere we were fully operational, and in Lucknow we were operational. I think by end of June, sometime last year itself. So we haven't closed down much as such. And even today, the situation seems to be growing in number of cases, but we are trying to do precautions, keep precautions, and still running because our kind of work cannot actually happen remotely. Not all work can be taken up remotely. So we had that limitation. Working with the small, medium, size industries and also startups across India, uh, they are still not digital in every sense of operations. So they
Absolutely.
they they wish to meet and then solve and how things happen. So that's how it is. So coming to the session today, thank you so much, Shinu, for the opportunity, and I'll try and share my experience with the audience here, including the students and the budding entrepreneurs and working entrepreneurs. Just to give you a little background, uh, I had the opportunity of working with the best of enterprises across the world, which are the top business entities in India and overseas in the investment banking space. But at the same time, I got a good opportunity to work with the first generation entrepreneur. So the spectrum that I've seen in terms of economic activity, from freelancers to large scale enterprises, has given me a lot of perspective, and also added enrich my experience of working in the financial domain. So I'll try and share a bit of those things in the anecdotes that I'll carry forward today, and try and give you some understanding of how things work. So my suggestion or my request would be, if you have any questions, please pop up and ask then and there, instead of waiting for the whole session to close and then do the Q&A. I'll be happy to answer those things on a practical basis. I've tried to compile some bit of it in a very, very short span of time, what I got to give you a presentation as such. All right. So looking at fundraising, let me give you the current scenario and how you as a budding entrepreneur or a student or a first generation entrepreneur and even women entrepreneur can look at it in today's environment. Startups per se has always found capital raising a challenge, and your own savings becomes the very first form of capital raising. Is the very first investment that you make in your business by your savings, is the very first seed or capital that you invest, and thereafter you keep looking for capital from other sources. I'll capture a couple bit of government benefits as well, where capital accessibilities are there. But where all do you go? You go to friends, you go to families, and if you go by the nomenclature in the startup ecosystem, the very first round is savings, seed round, and then at the seed itself, it's a friends, family, and fools round. Why do we call friends, family, and fools round? Because friends support you, given that you're inclined to do something. They want to support you in the gesture of in that relationship that they share with you. The parents support because they want you to get stable, get established, become independent financially, and they feel obligated as parents to give support to your enterprising or any economic activity. But fools are the ones who are not related to you, but they are looking at putting some early stage risk. So they take extraordinary risks at that stage, and that is why it is the first engagement with the ecosystem, wherein people who are unrelated, not known to you, would like to back you for the ideas and support you for the venture journey that you have chosen. So that is the very first engagement that you get. I have been advising some of the startups in this particular domain. So I'll take an example here. One of my clients happen to be based out of Kochi. They are into laminate and interior products for households. So they have laminates, they have ply-based products, they have other such product lines. Now they are looking to raise funds from their friends and family based out of Canada and US, and they are now looking at alternative ways of how they can actually generate funds and put that into the company. The challenge that we face at this stage is to convince them about any value that you want to create. And for raising any capital in equity form, there has to be value in the enterprise, there has to be value in the idea or the product or the venture that you're creating. But how to justify this value to the people at this point is always a challenge, because you're just revenue positive. You've started doing business, your revenues are just coming in, the market is validating you, you have not grown sufficiently to have reasonable profits. So you find traction, but you are still not be able to scale it up or grow as such, and you're looking at some capital support for the benefit of shipping it. But the challenge is on the real side is what will be the value of that entity and how will this particular transaction help raise funds. So in this particular scenario, there are a couple of alternatives that we have been discussing. The first alternative was to raise funds as a startup on a premium valuation and then document accordingly. But this particular alternative had its own challenge, and the challenge was how will I issue shares on premium without have the obligation of capital gains? Because in India, if you are issuing anything on premium, you are bound to attract capital gain taxation, and a startup cannot afford to lose money in capital gain and rather utilize that money for the purpose of expansion. So we are figuring out ways of doing it, but the government of India has its own set of norms which can be leveraged at this juncture. They have a Startup India program under which startups can register themselves on a DIPP. I hope you are aware of that. Once you are registered as DIPP, recognized startup, then you can apply for capital gain exemption. It is not natural, it is not automatic, it is on application basis. And this application is actually for intermediate ministerial evaluation. So there will be multiple ministries who will evaluate your case, assess the situation, and then recommend capital gain exemption if they find your application suitable for the purpose. So it is interministerial board will assess and approve this application. Once application is assessed and approved, you are exempt for capital gains for any fundraising to the tune of 10 CR of 10 crores of capital raised. Now, up to 10 crore, there will be no capital gain, but beyond 10 crore, there will be capital gain for the early stage startups and entrepreneurs. This is a good enough threshold. We hear every now and then that this limit may go up to 50 crores because various business bodies and startup bodies have recommended the government for higher limits, but it stand at 10 crore. It may go up to 50 crores in the future. Unless you get this exemption, any money that you raise on the as a starter from friends, families, or angels from the market will be on premium, but will also attract capital gain, and we have to avoid capital gain as a approach. So this alternative works only when the registration of startups are done. It gets approval for capital gain exemption. It has to generate a valuation certificate from merchant banker to justify the valuation on which the money is being borrowed. And this particular money also has certain norms, that is having a pre-money valuation and the value of funds that is being generated for the post-money valuation. So pre-money valuation, post-money valuation are the norms to be fulfilled, as a data to be structured, and based upon it, the fundraising happens. Seems to be a very simple activity, an activity which is where your family support you in capital form, but given the norms in India around income tax and company laws, we have to abide by the norms and do things accordingly. The second alternative of doing the same thing is to raise funds from overseas market or international NRI investors. India has a norm that if you're raising funds from NRI investors, then you can issue convertible notes. Convertible notes is an instrument which is very, very unique in its nature, and it's very simple as well. So at the early stage of fundraising, when you raise funds and you don't know what valuation will be there for your particular company, at that time you can raise funds with a commitment that whenever the proper funding round happens, at that time, at that valuation, the early investors will get a discount. So let's say if you raise funds, like you raise 50 lakh rupees today at the early stage, and you don't know what is the right valuation for you, and you tell the investors that in the next proper round of funding, I will raise funds, but I'll give you a discount on valuation so that you get the advantage of early backing. So these entities who raise funds through this convertible route mechanism give a discount of valuation. So if the professional round happens at, let's say, 10 CR of valuation, 10 crore of valuation, then the early investor will get a 20%, 30% or 40% discount. So for their investment, they will have a pre-money valuation of 6 CR or 7 CR, whereas all other investors will have a pre-money valuation of 10 CR. That is another way of doing it. In this, you don't need valuation certificate at the early stage. You do not need the complexity in the initial phase. You just have to do a documentation of convertible notes between the company and the investors, generate funds, declare in the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and then go on with utilizing those funds. Whenever the next proper financial round happens, which is a larger sum of funds being raised, at that stage, equity allotment or any other share allotment, whether it is cumulative convertible preference shares or it is a hybrid security, any such thing can be issued as per the proper financing round. That is the second alternative. There's another third alternative of raising funds, wherein you are raising funds at this particular stage, but how to document it is to make that person as a director into your company with a very small nominal proportionate equity that you already have, and take funds from that person on a unsecured loan basis. But there is a flip side to it. If you go by this route, your fundraising will happen a little easy way, but in the future, whenever you have to give that person a sufficient engagement on the equity side, you will have to either pay off their unsecured loans, or you will have to convert unsecured loan into equity before any financing round happens. Why I'm talking about all these parameters? Because in general, we always talk about fundraise. I need funds. I need to raise funds from any source. What are the alternatives of raising funds? But people do not know what are the challenges of raising funds. The fundraising had its own set of challenges: on ground, operational, legal, compliance, procedural, convincing, negotiation, valuation raised based challenges. So I'm talking about those specific challenges which people face whenever they go into fundraising from people beyond promoters. And those challenges should be known, because if you're aware of those challenges, you shall program or plan your project accordingly. So this case study was just to give you a glimpse of alternative ways of doing things, the challenge of the early stage documentation, the challenge of the early stage valuation, because everything is debatable, everything is contingent. Valuation doesn't come as a mathematical term wherein 2 plus 2 will always be 4. Your venture 2 plus 2 can be 4, somebody else's venture 2 plus 2 can be 8, in somebody else's venture 2 plus 2 can be 16 as well. So valuation is as much an art as it is a science. And in fundraising for early stage businesses or startups, it is a really important parameter. And what valuation, at how much dilution should I raise funds? I hope this is clear to you as a context. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer that. Otherwise, I'll move to the next part that I've thought to cover.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's move to
Oh,
the
yeah.
agenda.
Good
Yeah.
evening, sir. I just want to ask you one question. As we are talking about the fundraising and the plannings, so initially, after how much time you can ask for fundraising, or you have to start your business with the fundraising? What do you say? Initially, you
So
have to invest yourself, or what?
see, at the early
Because
stage, at the early
yes,
stage, any business need to have at least minimum capital so that they can do some minimum transactions.
yes,
Fundraising fundraising is best suited when you have revenue in the books and your model has been accepted in terms of business. Your product has been accepted, you're getting some traction. If you go too early in the stage of fundraising from outside parties, they will try and extract the maximum on negotiation of stakes. Let's take an example. You just started as a product, you defined a product, you found that this product is good, I want to start my business, and you want 10 lakh rupees of funds. If you go out in market and ask somebody for 10 lakh rupees of funds, they may ask for a 50% stake in your company. And you'll find it difficult to justify that why at all that much fund should be taken at a equal partnership level. It is not suitable. But that is how things will be coming your way. So the more you are able to invest from your side, the more you're able to generate from the customers. The best money that you can generate from business is always the customer's money. Where you have sold a product or a service, satisfied the customer, generated money through revenues, and reinvested that money in the business. That is the best money you can ever have. Second best is to have it from your own savings or from lending of financial institutions. That is less costly, cheaper funds. But in startup space, lending or debt funds or taking money from bank becomes a challenge, because for them collateral is a difficulty, and every bank asks for a collateral for any lending. They have their own set of norms of cash flow, set of norms for minimum revenue. So accessing debt from banking becomes a difficulty for starters because they do not have much assets, they do not have financial backing, they do not have collateral assets, and that is where it becomes a difficulty. So at the end of it, they are bound to go to equity partners. They are bound to go to raise funds on equity basis or for by issuance of shares. So I hope you understand that we can raise funds as loans and we can also raise funds as equity shares. Whenever we raise funds on equity shares, the more we can delay and we can build our business, the better it is for us as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, the one who is investing has much higher negotiation power compared to you as an individual. They will try and extract the
yeah,
better deal from you. So if you want to have a thumb rule, at least try and generate revenue of 10-15 lakh rupees minimum in your business before you start approaching any fundraising. That is a minimum requirements. And if you are not able to complete or fulfill these minimum requirements, then it may come to a point that you have to accept an unfavorable investment deal from an angel investor or a seed investor or somebody who's willing to back you in that form. I
yeah,
hope
I
that
got it.
answers your query.
Yeah. That is the challenge. Somebody wants to invest, then they want to get the best deal. That is the system nowadays. One has to be, and for even if you want to take a loan, as you are saying, collaterals you have to have. It is not like that. It is not something bed of roses. You want to start and you take the loan, or you to
Absolutely.
get the
I
funds.
agree.
You have to
So
have your own backup initially.
I'll
And
give
it
you
is
some
nothing like,
options.
it is nothing like that. You have an idea and you want to culminate. You can have the funds. You have to have your own fund and backing initially. No.
So I would suggest I'll give you some perspective as well. Uh, Whenever people say that ideas will be able to attract funds, I am not of that opinion, because unless and until you are able to execute that idea on ground, money will not be attracted. Secondly, having your own funds is definitely advantageous, but not everybody has that advantage. So what can you do when you don't have funds but you want to do business? In the early stages, wherever your business is less than 1 crore of revenue, try and go for incubation, or try and go for government supported grants, or go for government supported scheme funds instead of going to equity raising. What are alternatives do you have? Let me cover that. uh, the very first
These mudra
alternative at the
schemes.
Yes, please.
Sir, go ahead. Look, I am listening, sir. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no worries. So the very first alternative that you have at the early stages to find incubation with any of the government backed incubators, because they have seed capital as well. So they provide from some funds from the tune of 5 lakhs to 25 lakh rupees, usually 30 lakh rupees, based upon which segment you are operating. In biotechnology, there is an agency by the name of BIRAC, which is government of India's arm for supporting biotechnology startups. There are government supported Atal Innovation Mission incubators across India, who give you seed capital at the early stage and also mentoring and guidance and support. So at the early stage where your business is less than 1 crore of revenue, try and see if you can get incubated in any of the government backed incubators for the early access of capital, because they will not be unfair in their approach. They have a structured program and they will go by their structured program. They are not money lenders who will try to extract the maximum they can. They will try and give you what the scheme says. So that kind of capital can be accessed by JS. There are step government of India step grant supported incubators across India. There is
Can
social
we have the
incubators.
names, sir, on the? Can we have the names there on the display?
Yeah, so you have startup Oasis in Jaipur as one of the incubators. There is JSS Step in Noida. There is Atal Innovation Mission. I'll share the data or linkages with Shinuji, and Shinuji can share it with you. So these are incubators, and they are the best sources of early stage funding, wherein you are building traction, building a product, and then finding some support, and they will not be unreasonable in the approach. That is the first alternative. Second alternative is to access money from government's Mudra Yojana, wherein there are three tranches of 50,000 rupees of loan, 5 lakh rupees of loan, and 10 lakh rupees of loan. Non collateral, it is a collateral free lending for micro level enterprises. That is second alternative. They have Mudra Yojana, Shishu, Vesak, something on those lines. So they give you first 50,000, then they'll give you 5 lakh, and then they can give you 10 lakh. They will not ask for collaterals. Every bank has to do Mudra Yojana lending. That is second alternative. If you business requires certain capital intensity, there is some machinery required, there is some capital assets needed, then there is a stand up India scheme of government, wherein women entrepreneurs can get up to 2 cr of collateral free lending from any bank. And collateral free lending means you don't need any additional collateral. Your project should be viable enough to generate funds to justify the need of 2 crores of funds, up to 2 crores of fund. It is not for everyone, but up to 2 crores of fund. So this is specifically for women entrepreneurs, and anyone with having a SC or ST background as an entrepreneur, socioeconomic background as SC or ST, and they can certify that they are the founders of the company. Even they can get it. So this particular scheme is called Stand Up India scheme, and this specifically for women entrepreneurs and SC/ST background entrepreneurs up to 2 CR of funds without collateral. So I know a lot of people who have got it. Some people have started co-working spaces 3 years back. Happens to be a client. They got it under Stand Up India. The founder is a woman and supported by her brother as a small stakeholder. So it has to be a 51% stake and above by women to generate and access this, and you have to have capital intensity which justifies that the project is viable enough to generate funds and pay back the lending part. So every bank has to do this. This is another alternative. Then there are alternatives of accessing grants. If you are into innovation domain, if you are developing a product which is innovative in nature, and you need certain research, R&D, and you need some support. So there are certain government supported and government validated labs which help on R&D facilities. So there's NBRI, CDRI, there is Venture Center in Pune, there is uh, I'm forgetting that name in Delhi. So there are some such labs which are into R&D centers. There's IIT Kanpur is there, which has this kind of facility. R&D based projects gets government grants for the purpose of research and innovation and also patenting. They also have a scheme, government under Department of Science and Technology. Uh, they have a Development Technology Development Board, DST, Department of Science and Technology, Technology Development Board, has a soft loan facility of up to 2 CR, which doesn't require any collateral. It gives you loan on a very, very low rate of interest, that is 6% of interest. And you have to present your project to them and get access of this kind of fund. So this is again a loan fund, soft loan, no collateral, low interest from Department of Science and Technology, Technology Development Board, TDB. And they have given it to some of the IIT based, projects which are innovative in nature and required certain funds for scaling up. Then there is an agency by the name of IFCI, which is the Government of India's private equity arm, which provides funds for capital intensive projects, but they give it for, they have current schemes only for manufacturing of automobile parts, auto parts, and they have two other schemes, for one for OBC entrepreneurs and other for SC/ST entrepreneurs. Irrespective of gender, people can access and apply for these schemes. You can find more details on IFCI. Then government has fund of funds scheme program, which is basically to support early stage venture capital, who in turn will eventually invest in projects and startups in the early stage. That is specific to different states, and SIDBI is the nodal agency for that particular fund. So they are running it with government of UP, they are running it with government of Maharashtra, West Bengal, and they are putting funds in venture capital, and venture capital is putting funds in the startups. So that has been another segment of alternative for funds. But any early stage venture, I suggest that you should try and engage yourself with an incubator, because through an incubator you are able to access so many schemes that government is launching, or state government is launching, or central government is launching, and those schemes are beneficial for your particular project. Like in UP, there is a scheme of which is called ODOP. So ODOP is one district, one product. So every district have been given an earmarked a product. So Lucknow as a district has been earmarked for a product of chicken curry. If you know that the clothing that has chicken curry, and that is done by artisans. So ODOP, they provide soft loan facilities from KVIC, Khadi Village Industries Commission, and KVIB, Khadi Village Industries Board, and they provide ODOP scheme benefits. There is a scheme which has benefit, and central government is trying to implement this scheme across India for micro and that is called Kutir Udyog, household ventures, small scale household ventures, and provide early stage capital support for these enterprises, and also some recognition and marketing support for the products as such. So there are various ways through which these can be accessed, provided you have the right knowledge and you have people who can support you. And my suggestion is to have such kind of incubations and programs done, so that what all channels exist and how to access those channels. I hope that give you some
Okay.
idea in terms of
Thank you.
alternatives.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, definitely acknowledgement, and but you have to learn and cannot mug up so many things. Yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah,
informative.
yes,
Thank
I
you
can
much.
understand it's not easy in the initial stages, because you are looking at everything, and being an entrepreneur is the most difficult job, because you are a man of or woman of every different domains. You are handling marketing, you're handling finance, you're handling operations, you're handling production, you're handling almost everything, and that is where the real challenge for entrepreneur is, that because they are a one man show initially, and almost always crunch of time and team, and they find it more difficult to do the requisite homework. to some extent. I completely can empathize with that challenge.
Yeah,
So at the early stages, what are the various aspects that require your fund and attention is research and development. If any of the product which is from engineering or engineering goods or biotechnology or anything which has technology background to it, and if there is a R&D and testing required for that product, so there is a sufficient investment needed for doing the requisite research and development. uh, there are also funds needed at the early stage for the purpose of growing the startup idea, shaping it up, taking it to the market, approaching the customers. So growing the startup idea into a proper business, meeting people, onboarding an initial team, all those things are needed. So at the very early stage, there's so many needs in terms of funds from R&D to growing your startup idea. The customer acquisition is very very important critical activity, and there is a spending on customer acquisition. You have to do digital marketing. You have to do certain marketing on ground as well, so that you are able to take your concept and idea to the customer, and then customer start finding traction with you. And always the front crunch is always there, and there are operational costs as well. Having an office, having a team, having electricity bills, telephone bills to be paid off, all these things are initial expenditures. And also sometimes you have to work on your product, you have to work on your solution. Maybe if it is a technology bad, you have to work on the back end technologies, or you have to work on back end operations to scale it up. So any such thing is the initial reasons of raising funds, which are there on your screen right now. So unless we have sufficiency in terms of resources, it becomes a real challenge. Alternatives for funding is equity investment, debt investment, convertible equity, and royalty structures. So why we say these alternatives? Let me take you through some of the components. So equity investment fundamentally is risk investment. Somebody participates in the risk of the business and come on the co-ownership level. So they will put money, they'll become one of the co-owners. The amount of shares they will hold is subject to a particular deal, but they will definitely have risk exposure, and they cannot say that I have lesser risk than the founder or co-founder. So they share the risk, and that's why the return also that they expect is higher than anybody else. Debt investment from banking, from NBFCs, from micro lending, from unsecured lending from the open market, from peer-to-peer lending. There are alternatives of raising funds as debts, but debt is suitable only for those businesses where your cash flows are certain. If your cash flows are not certain, lending as an alternative is a very very difficult alternative, because you'll find difficulty in meeting the monthly EMIs that you have to pay off. So debt investments is suggested to those who can consider their business model as stable and their cash flow is predictable. Unless your business model is stable or your cash flow is predictable, debt investment should be avoided in the startup space or early stage venture space. Yes, if you are getting sufficient gestation period, sometimes schemes have a gestation period wherein they say you do not have to pay EMIs for the first 6 months or first 1 year, and that kind of gestation. Then debt instrument can also be tried, but it has to be evaluated on the merit of the business itself. Convertible equity as a kind of instruments which is basically debt in the initial form and become equity in the later form. So the instruments by the name of cumulative convertible preference shares or convertible debentures, these are two prominent instruments used for converting debt into equity at the later stage are used today. A lot of early stage investors prefer issuing or getting preference shares compared to equity shares, because they have the advantage of minimum assured dividend, and then the opportunity of converting into equity later. Many VCs and PEs also invest through this particular route. They don't directly invest in equity and they don't provide debt as such. There's another alternatives to debt in venture space is called venture debt, which is collateral free lending that happens only if you have VC or private equity backing. Unless and until you have private equity or a venture capital backing, venture debt, which is a different form of instrument compared to regular loan from banks, it cannot be accessed. Fourth alternative is having security deposits and royalty structure. Many food businesses operate in the fourth alternative. They take franchisees, they actually establish franchisees and they take funds as security deposits, and they also have royalty structure. So whatever revenue they will generate, the franchisee will generate, the franchisee will pay back the main company some amount of revenue as royalty. So that is also one way of funding your business. Many businesses go into royalty structure or a franchise route for a simple reason. It is a capital light model. You expand without ownership of the franchisees, and you generate funds from selling franchisees. So you are able to generate money needed for the purpose of structuring your business or growing your business. This is another form of funding that is available. Now we keep hearing about various methods of fundraising or sources of fundraising. The very first method is bootstrapping, wherein you put in your own money, your friends and family invest, sometime people who are in your network also invest, or you can grow for crowdfunding or crowdsourcing. What is crowdfunding? There are platforms like Keto, there are platforms like Indiegogo, there are platforms like some international platforms as well, which helps you take your idea to larger masses, and those larger masses support your idea or a project and contribute some funds as a crowd. That crowd funds then come back to the main entity, and you are able to start your venture accordingly. Many innovative products have taken a crowdfunding route. One of the products which I have myself seen is Rotimatic, an automatic roti maker based out of Singapore, which can generate roti for Indian, Indian households are very fond of rotis and chapatis, which can generate a variety of rotis and chapatis as an automated machine. They went through a crowdfunding route, and they got initial 3 years of booking also. Another product by the name of Casbrella, which was a inverted umbrella, which took the crowdfunding route. It was a European inventor who initiated this particular product, which is a very improved version of a regular umbrella that we use, and they took the crowdfunding route. So crowdfunding in India works for social enterprises, social initiatives, creative initiatives, but not so much for the products and services as such. But overseas, lot of innovative products take the crowdfunding alternative route. So there is a difference between Indian geography and the overseas international geography in this particular alternative. But yes, this is definitely one of the alternatives to be considered. Then there's equity sources, which is outside equity sources. Angel investors, the very early backers for entrepreneur enterprises, and wherein people take some share, some risk, are called angels, business angels. In Rajasthan, I know of RAIN, which is Rajasthan Angel Investment Network, and which is early stage backer, and they have invested in early startups coming out from that region. So angel investors in India are Mumbai Angels, India Angel Network, you know. There are some other regional angel networks as well, Swan Angel Network. Many such initiatives have come out. Uh, these are early stage backers. These are people who invest at a higher risk space, and they eventually exit at a later stage. Then come venture capital. Venture capital are basically professional funds, which professional entities and professional funds who are in the business of managing money on somebody else's behalf, or they have their own funds which they invest as a enterprise. So their model of operandi is to have a theme around which they invest. They have different stages at which they would like to put money. Some are early stage, some are late stage, some are seed stage, some are growth stage. So they have different stages on which they are comfortable investing, or otherwise they have themes around sectors. So they are healthcare, health tech VC fund. There can be edutech VC funds. They are different sectoral themes, or a stage of business life cycle stages as a theme. So VCs are professional investors who generate fund from investors, and they eventually invest that capital in the startup space, and they will try to exit in 3 to 5 years time whenever they get a suitable exit points. They make money by exits, and valuation is the benefit that they look for. At the end of it, they resell those shares back to the promoters or to the larger investors, generate funds, go back and reinvest in small stage or early stage ventures. Private equity is another alternative, but private equity is slightly different from venture capital. Any HNI, high net worth individual or ultra HNI who has spare money and they would like to take exposure of the venture space can invest in personal capacity or in the family investment capacity. There are family offices who invest private equity on behalf of their clients. There are private funds which are private equity funds per se, but private equity is primarily a slightly sizable segment in terms of capital, but many individual investors prefer to have their own private equity funds and then invest in independent capacity. So any HNI, ultra HNI can have their own private equity. They don't need to have a proper fund. They can invest in personal and individual capacity as well. And they can also have a fund which is a PE fund, which is a registered PE fund run by professionals. So it has both hybrid models. But usually private equity comes at a later stage, and they in India private equity is preferred for capital intensive projects instead of marketing intensive projects. Venture capital is considered more for marketing intensive or product intensive stages. But these are equity sources which are alternative for funding. Then there are certain platforms through which you can generate funds. I already talked about incubators. There are accelerators, which are again thematic enterprises who prefer to take a special category or segment of startups or ventures which can be accelerated in a lesser time, lesser energy, and lesser effort. So accelerators are slightly different from incubators. Let me explain these two things. Incubators per se are the early stage uh, support systems for incubating ideas, incubating first generation entrepreneurs, incubating some innovation. They are not in the space of business development and business growth. They are trying to give a support system as initial capital. Accelerators are primarily into growth phase. They want ventures which ideas are tested and now they are ready to scale up faster. So pick up such projects, give them sufficient capital, support them with capital linkages, network, collaboration, associations, business deals, business development, a lot of those things which can add to their growth and expedite their growth in a lesser time, lesser energy, lesser effort, lesser resources. Then there are grants. These grants are usually given by foundations or government, and very few startups have been benefiting from grants because grants are in the nature of consumption. They're not capital per se, but they give you funds for innovation or R&D specifically. Some grants are also for social impact space. If you're doing something which in the social impact space, you can access those kind of grants as well. Then there are debt sources. I already talked about banking. I've talked about commercial institutions. There are now today options of peer-to-peer lending. You can raise loan from people as individuals as well, and you can raise loans from unsecured, informal market, which is unsecured loans. You can also raise funds and debt form from venture debt alternatives. So these are done only where the venture capital is already invested and further lending can be accessed. Various stages of equity based investment. Inception is the stage where ideas are generated. It is being conceived. The founder is the only person involved and still figuring out somebody who can come and join them as a co-founder. Seed is a stage where they are ready to seed money into the development of product or taking the product to the market or creating the first proper paying customer segment where the ideas have been structured but market is yet being made. That is a seed stage. It is very much similar to how germination in agriculture happens. Then there are early stage where the seed has already been sowed, the market is getting traction, but they are now looking at regionally expanding their product or services base. Is the early stage ventures. Then there's a growth stage where they've already seen multiple categories of customers. The product has got validation. The customers are looking for repeat buying and selling. The model of the business is set now. You don't have to tweak the model. You don't have to tweak the product. Now you all have to do is, how can I take my product to 10 times more customers, or 4 or 5 times bigger markets, or start working in new markets. That is a growth stage. Then later stages are bridge stages and exit stages, which are mature stages where the business has already taken a shape and they are now in a space of providing exits to early stage investors, because anybody who is coming on board as an investor in the initial phases would like to have an alternative to exit at some point in time, because unless and until they exit, they don't make money. So anybody giving you money would like to create an exit. जो पैसा लगा रहा है वो पैसा बनाना चाहता है. Nobody invests to lose money, everybody invests to make money. So as an entrepreneur, you have to create options for those investors so that they can find suitable exits at the later stages. It can be any stage, which it's very custom and subjective to a particular case, but exits are very critical for any fundraising. If you cannot give exits, people will not like to give you funds in the equity stage. To understand that exit is critical to raising funds. Let me give you some idea what kind of stages and how they shape it up. At the inception stage, the business concept, building a prototype or proof of concept is being done. At the seed stage, the team is getting made, the product development is happening, monetization starts at the seed and early stage. From early stage to growth stage, expansion, team building, marketing and sales capabilities, structuring the organization, shaping it up. Expansion stage is the expansion of geographies, scaling up operations, economies of scale, and the later stage is the exit and bridge stage, wherein inorganic growth, where you are acquiring. So look at Byju's, they are now acquiring edutech ventures. They are planning for IPO. So Zomato is planning for an IPO. InMobi is planning for an IPO. They're going for mergers and acquisitions. Some bigger company acquired it. This is a stage where Flipkart was acquired by Walmart. So this is a stage where strategic things happen. Either you get acquired, or you get listed, or you go for further acquiring small players so that you can expand your portfolio. At every stage, you can look at the seed stage, the kind of returns people expect from inception to seed. If somebody enters at inception and exit as seed, they try to make at least 15-20 times of the money they invested. If they invested 10 lakh rupees, 1 lakh rupees at the inception stage, they may end up making 15 or 20 lakh if it is a growing venture. At the early stage, they end up making 10 to 15 times. In growth stage, 8 to 10 times. Expansion stage 5 to 7 times, and exit stage 3 to 5 times. All this is between the previous stage and the current stage. It is not from the inception till this stage. So please understand, it is between two stages. These multiples are between two stages, not from this origination point till that particular stage. So early stage means seed stage and early stage. The gap between these two stages gives you the kind of return of 10 to 15 times. At the early stage and growth stage, they give you a return of 8 to 10 times. So that is a kind of structure which is being followed, and this is how the ecosystem works. So anybody who coming in and backing you as an entrepreneur with capital would like to have suitable exit points at every stage, and they would like to make money by exiting these ventures. Investment ranges are bootstrapping. Phase is inception and seed. So bootstrapping, by the term itself, means you are shoestrings. You know how to tie your shoes basically. So it's an inception and seed stage. Investment is very subjective. Availability of funds is a very critical parameter. At the incubator and accelerator stage is a seed point. 5 lakhs to 50 lakh rupees of funds is accessible. At the angel level stage, it is the point of entry at the time of seed or early stage. 20 lakhs to $1 million, which is upon 7.5 crores. At the venture capital stage is early stage or growth stage. It doesn't happen on the seed stage or inception stage. They enter at a $500,000, which is 3.5 crores roughly, to 35 crores, which is 5 million roughly. So $500,000 to 5 million is around the venture capital, and private equity it's upwards of 25 crores. So different stages, different size of investments, different phases. and different parties who will take interest in putting this kind of investments. Investors look at certain very fundamental factors which are important to them. How good is the idea, whether it is executable or not. Have you done so far anything on ground, whether customers are validating the idea or you are just selling the idea as a concept. The idea best saleable is the one which has got traction from the customers and customers are raving about it in terms of product or a service or a hybrid, anything that you are trying to build. But that idea has to be validated by the market. Your concept has little meaning, your execution has far more meaning. The executable idea, an idea validated by the customer side, is the idea the investor is looking for. What you have done so far in business, how much sales you have done, how much team you have been able to build, how much operations you command, how systematic is your business, is the size or the business aspect to the venture. They will try and see whether your business is actually up and running or it is just teething. How good is the future? What can you build together? Whether the team has the competence of shaping it up. And at this point, it is very important to have the right founders and the co-founders who show capability of building it up, shaping it up, and converting the idea into a reality. From the initial traction to real venture is what they're looking at. So they're looking at capable teams. They're looking at more predictable futures. So that is what they look at. And very critical and important aspect is return on investments. What kind of money can this particular investment generate? Because if there are professional investors, they have to justify their investor base that what kind of money this particular investment will generate. If they are investors who are investing in their own personal capacities, then they will like to have a risk hedging approach or generate at least a minimum ROI that they need. But anyone looking at equity investment are looking for at least thumb rule is 24% of return on investments, ROI of 24% year on year basis. If they are not getting this kind of ROI, they will not take sufficient interest in supporting the project or investing in that particular idea. How this process works, you approach an investor, you make a presentation, and they will try and evaluate it. If they find interest, they'll go by DD, which is called due diligence process. They will check every legal, financial, strategic, operational document and aspects of business so that they are clear in terms of what kind of risk this particular project has and where it stands in real terms. Once the due diligence process is completed and they still are interested, they will give you a term sheet. A term sheet will be a document which talks about various terms and conditions through which the investment will happen in this particular project. And that terms and condition can be valuation condition, voting rights, board seat, further dilution, preference of liquidation, return of risk, mitigation approaches, exit alternatives, right of first refusal, tag along, all those things. Then happens a detailed due diligence process, which is basically a very thorough check of every document before the further documentation happens. Then funding happens, and then shareholder agreement is drafted and signed, agreed by all investors along with the promoters. That is the funding process. What is due diligence process? So DD process has certain legal aspects. They will check the company filings. If you have a company, if you have an LLP, they'll check the LLP filings. They'll check the tax filings so far. They will check the income tax returns filed so far. They will go by any contracts that you undertaken. If you have undertaken a rental contract, then also they will check. If you have done any franchise contract, they will check. Any legal paperwork that you have done so far for the purpose of business will be checked, evaluated, assessed under legal due diligence process. Then they will try and check tax and financial due diligence process, which is basically talks about what is the current capital, how much loan do you have in the books, how much debts you have, how much creditors you have, how much assets you have, how much liquid cash you have. All those financial parameters of a balance sheet, all those financial parameters of a P&L profit loss statement is evaluated. Then they also check the technical and intellectual property DD. whether you hold an intellectual property for a product or service, whether your IPRs exist, your brand story exists. So there is a branding IPR, which is basically trademark, and there is patents and copyrights, which are basically ownership of intellectual property. They will try and check those things and whether these properties have any disputes or not. Then they will do human resource diligence process, which is basically talks about what kind of team do you have, whether they are capable, qualified, experienced, what they have been able to do so far, is there sufficient manpower in the team, or we are having more manpower than required. So they will try and assess every aspect of human resource that is present in the business as a DD process. Investors psychology. Investors look out for uh, how good is your business in terms of future prospects, whether it can be merged, it can be scaled up, it can be consolidated in the future. Many investors just pick up ventures which can be sold to bigger investors. Like Flipkart was started to be sold to Amazon, but it didn't happen. So eventually got sold to Walmart. So possibility of selling the venture to a larger stakeholder or larger entity is also one of the aspects they will like to evaluate. What is the portfolio of startup? The portfolio that they have, they'll try and pick up something which is complementing or supporting to the current portfolio. Their portfolio may have certain businesses which can cross engage with each other. So sometimes portfolio of startup is equally important. Hot trends. What are the current trends? That today there's a lot of investment happening in the edutech space is a current trend. Earlier there have been food tech space. There have been cab aggregator space. E-commerce was initial trends. Today the trend is edutech. Health tech is the current trend. Future can be AI, machine learning based ventures, which is a future trend. So trends are equally important at the time of investors because they affect their psychology and they also affect their decision making. What is the size of business can you actually make out of the idea that you have is the business scale. If you have the right business scale, then you will get some better traction from the potential investors. Anything which is small in scale, anything which just cannot be scaled up properly or given a size will not be of interest to investors because there the exits or the valuation benefits they will not find. So business need to be scalable, and many times service based business find the difficulty of scalability. And what is the sweet spot on the competition scale, whether you are having any competitive advantage? If yes, you have the benefit. So they will try and see whether you are a better bet compared to any other entrepreneur in the same space in terms of converting the idea into reality. And if you're able to beat the competition or you showcase the potential to beat the competition, they will like to definitely evaluate your candidature. Prerequisite of getting funded. Ideas do not change the world, as it is said, it's the execution that counts. If you're able to convert your ideas into reality, if you're able to shape your businesses and showcase the execution part of your competencies, instead of saying I have a great idea, show the investor that you have executed so well, and your execution should be supported by funds. Every business is not fundable, please understand this. Every single type of business cannot be funded. Equity funding is not for every business. Micro level entities should never go for equity funding. Only businesses which has scalability, which can be shaped into larger size, should go for equity funding. Otherwise, they should not go for equity based funding. And one of the very important aspect that we need to understand is that funding is not an indicator of success. You don't evaluate success of any business by the number of rounds of money they have raised. Funding is a need. Every business needs resources. You try and generate those resources from your own means, from the customers by generating revenue, and also from outside parties in the form of debt and equity. So funding is not a parameter of success. Funding is just the need of business, and you should go for only that much funding as you need in the business, not over, not under. Last but not the least, business should be self-sustainable. If the business is incapable of becoming sustainable in the coming times or in future, then that business can best be sold to a bigger player. Otherwise, that business will not exist on its own. So it's have a smaller, or I'll say shorter shelf life. Any businesses which is not viable on unit economics will not be able to sustain itself. Either it will be sold to larger business or it will end and as a closure. So businesses should be self-sustaining to be funded. That's a prerequisite. So this is where I like to close the discussion in terms of what I wanted to say. I'm sharing my email link and for any direct connects if that is needed for questions and stuff. Thank you so much, and I'm open to questions. This is where I like to close the presentation part. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to give you some practical exposure that I have in that space. You can ask about funding. You can ask about any legal aspect around funding. You can ask about anything which is troubling you as an entrepreneur. If there's something I am aware of, I'll share. Otherwise, I'll pass that question. Shinu, are you there?
I think things will be taken up regarding this. What is difference between the LLP and the private limited companies? The differences.
Okay. Yes, I can answer this. LLP is a limited liability partnership, which is a modern form of partnership with a limited liability clause around it. It is governed by a different act. The law of LLP is different from a company. Companies are governed by Companies Act 2013 and LLPs are governed by LLP Act 2008. So there are different acts which govern these two entities. If your business is looking for external capital raising in the form of equity or looking for venture capital or private equity kind of engagements in the future, private limited company is a better way of approaching your business because it gives you sufficient flexibility of instruments. It gives you sufficient flexibility of type of instruments that you can have, the difference between various stakeholders that you can keep, the kind of equity, the kind of instruments that you can issue, the terms and conditions around those instruments. So there's a lot of flexibility in a private company in terms of fundraising, which is not the case with any other form of business enterprises. LLPs are best suited if you are in the business of generating cash flow from selling your products and services, and you want to consume that cash flow in the business or outside the business. That is a discretionary thing. LLPs have an advantage of taxation as well, but private company has an advantage on some other grounds. So private company, if you are establishing a new private limited manufacturing concern, you have the advantage of lower taxation. It has to be incorporated in this particular year at max in the previous year and the current year, and you can avail a low tax income tax advantage for a new private limited machinery manufacturing oriented enterprise. LLP on the other side has a flat rates which are applicable for taxation. It doesn't have double taxation. Private limited has a challenge of double taxation again. Once you pay tax on the profit of the company, and once you declare dividends, that dividends get taxable in the hands of recipients. So let's say you generate 1 crore of funds in a private company, you pay a tax of 25%, and then eventually you declare dividend of 25 lakh rupees. That dividend is received by the founders in their individual capacities. They will be taxed as individual people, and dividend will be added to their income while they are calculating the income tax slabs. So there was initial way of dividend taxation which has been done away with recently, but the double taxation of private companies still continues in a different form. In LPs, there is no double taxation. What you pay at the LP level is what is paid. You don't pay another round of taxes even if you want to move the money outside the business. So you have the flexibility of consuming the money that you've generated, and you also have the flexibility of generating funds from outside sources. But LLPs doesn't have variety of instruments. Secondly, you cannot segregate between various level of investors that are coming in. Either you are managing partners or you are silent partners. There is no third rule. So the categorization is very, very binary in nature. So LLPs are good for partners who are coming together to do business and they don't need outside funds. They can go for lending, they can go for bank loans, that is fine, but they are not looking for equity infusions. Private limited is better suited for those who are looking for equity infusion because the kind of minimum requirements that they will have in the future can only be met by private limited companies, not by LLPs. International and overseas as well, there is credential aspect to this. LLPs are credit worthy, but private limited has far more credibility in the international market because they find it to be much more robust. And recently, there are more norms coming in for private companies in terms of audit trails, accounting software that they have to keep, the kind of declaration they have to make. So maintaining a private company is a costly affair compared to an LLP. An LLP basically, requires a 25,000 kind of minimum expenditure annual basis. A private company may require a little more than that, around 35-40,000 on a minimum basis for maintaining that particular kind of entity. So it's a little costly on compliances, a little costly on procedures, a little more regulated compared to an LLP, and that is the primary differences between LLPs and private limited companies. Yeah, I hope that answers your
Taxation,
question.
yeah, very nicely explained. Taxation slabs are same. Either it is LLP or it is a private
So
limited.
tax slabs for the small scale, which are micro and small and medium entities, this remains same. For corporate taxation, which is a corporate big size entities, they are different slabs.
Okay. Thank you so much. To some extent, learning basically.
I'm happy that I'm able to add some value to you people. If you have any other further question, please feel free to ask. Else, I think we are done for today as a session.
I think thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for being a great audience. I hope I was able to add some value. If there are more questions, if you want to connect, I've already shared my email ID and you can take, contact details if in case that is needed from Shinuji. And best wishes for your enterprise journey. It's a challenging one, but definitely a rewarding one. Yeah, Shinu. I'm unable to hear you. I think you are
You are
muted.
you are muted.
Shinu, you are muted.
Ma'am, you are mute. Mute.
You are muted, Shinu.
Now,
Yeah,
Ma'am,
we can hear you.
yes. Um, so, Jatin, I have a question.
Yes, please.
My question is very simple. All these fundas that we talk about is there. But let's say if I have simple, maybe 2 lakh rupees on with which I want to start business and work on it and take it to the next level. And I know I have a good sound plan to take this ahead. But all that I'm stuck is I'm not sure how do I raise that 10 lakh rupees because I don't have that confidence in guts. Because I don't want to go to friends, family, other people. I also don't want to take funding from bank in terms of collateral, etc. So, do you really recommend that I should go for this raising this money at this moment, or I should wait for some time and make more money and invest back into the business, and that's how I should grow and work for
See,
next 1.5 years?
ideally, the more you can delay, the more you can delay, the better it is for you. So
But
the
the
more
work is
time
so
you,
competitive. People have
so
deep pockets. Say I'm a very small time startup. Let's say I'm into an art and craft business. Okay, if I don't scale it up now, people will, I mean, there is nothing unique about my idea, so people will definitely copy, and they got deep pockets. So
yeah,
they
so this concept of copying an idea and that fear of missing out of the current opportunity is very prevalent across all type of entrepreneurs. It's just not about startups as well, but please understand that startups at the idea level are not fundable. Startups only at the level of execution, where they can showcase that they have executed something on ground, then only they are fundable. So if we can focus, instead of idea getting copied, we should focus upon how can I execute in a better way, so that I can retain some customers, I can generate some revenue, and then I can take it to the people who can invest. Unless and until you have executed something on ground, the investor will never be confident of your competencies. They will say that you have a great idea, but everybody has 1,000 great ideas. How different it is from anybody else for that matter. But let's say you start a art and craft store, or maybe an online direct to customer brand, from these hinterlands, from Amazon and stuff, digital marketing, you start using digital marketing, you start using e-commerce for the purpose of such thing. So first is to get the first 100 customers. Get the first 100 customers, and then get the first 100 repeat customers after that. Before, unless and until you can tell some story by numbers or some stories by execution, nobody will give you sufficient attention. So if you are going from e-commerce perspective, try and invest smartly on digital marketing, in the product, in dispatches, and the quality of the product, so that people who are buying are your ambassadors, and they promote and tell people more about this particular thing or product line. Once you have built some business, some revenue, then you start looking at alternative ways of funding it. Till then, any effort of fundraising, any effort on finding avenues for funding is a futile effort. It may not reap benefits, and you will feel frustrated at all at every single point that it's not happening, I don't have money. And many times people feel, if I had money, I'll be the next Ambani. That's not true. That's
How
not true.
long delay should be I mean, how long you think we can delay?
If you are investing at 2 lakh rupees, try and convert this 2 into 20
10x?
for, yeah. So I'm saying, if you can generate sufficient funds by using this 2 lakh rupees in terms of revenue to 20, if you're investing 2 lakh, at least at 20 lakhs of sale, 10x sales. I'm not saying 20 lakh of capital. With 2 lakhs, try and do 20 lakh of business. So 10 times of capital that you invested, if you can generate that kind of business, that is a good story to tell to anybody.
Absolutely. Jatin, also, since all of them are like tiny or they are starting, so what are the, I mean, as a chartered accountant, what do you recommend them in terms of taking care of, in terms of managing their accounts and things in their first years of operation? And,
See, I would suggest not to go with extraordinary compliances and stuff, because this doesn't make sense. So in Indian context, I'll say that if you are a small business, then you are exempted for GST registration up to the tune of 40 lakhs of turnover. Unless you know your business is getting over and above 40 lakhs, do not get registered under GST, not needed. But the challenge is, anybody who is selling online, direct to customer, D2C, from Amazon or Flipkart, the minimum requirement to have a GST registration. So they will not onboard without GST registration. They will not onboard an unregistered seller. So that is a different challenge. But if I am on a physical note, I'm working on a small scale, a micro scale in terms of business, my suggestion is to not register under GST and work as unregistered enterprise. And you can have business to the tune of 40 lakhs of turnover without being registered. It is a very legitimate way of doing it. There's nothing illegal around it.
but
But if
most
you
of
are
them are planning to do things online. And since
So if they are planning things online, then there's no alternative. You have to register, because neither Amazon nor Flipkart nor Myntra, none of them will entertain you without a GST registration. So you have to get registered. But once you get registered on GST, you mean, please understand, almost you are incurring a compliance burden of 1,500 2,000 rupees per month. So that is the minimum returns. You have to file GST returns. You have to complete those GST, procedures. Government is trying to minimize those things at the micro level, but it's still not there. So almost 20,000 rupees of compliance costs, and at least 5, 10,000 rupees of accounting costs you will have to incur as a minimum. Income tax, you can be a proprietor, that is not a problem. Unless you think that your business can be scaled up in a larger way, do not go for company registrations, not recommended at all. Neither for LPs. Go for proprietorship as an individual name or a freelancer. No problem with that. But GST you will not be able to avoid in e-commerce space.
For the benefit of audience also, can you tell us, say, if I want to register a proprietorship firm, what are the minimum requirements that I have and what is the amount required? What sort of documents are required for them?
So as a proprietorship, you will need a Shop Establishment Act, which is online registration. It is under Shop Establishment Act, the registration costs of roughly around 2,000 rupees, not more than that.
Can
It's
they
very
do it on
simple.
their own or they need
You can,
somebody?
no, they do it on their own, no problem. You need basic document of proof of address, proof of identity, and PAN number.
Okay.
So, and a photograph. So you can register yourself as a shop establishment as a very simple procedure online. You can just Google shop establishment registration, and you can register as a micro entity. Not a problem at all. That is a minimum requirement for it. Once you have registered, then you have to go to the bank and open the current account, and bank will ask for PAN and shop establishment registration. These two documents are needed at the bank level for current account opening for any trade, any deals, because you should not be doing business under savings account unless and until you are a very, very early stage. You don't know what's happening. You are still figuring out. So savings is just a trial stage, not a business stage. Once you know you're doing business, please open a current account with the bank. And because unless and until you have business in current account, you will never get lending from bank. So bank will lend only if you have business in current account. They will not lend if you have business in your savings account.
Okay, Jatin, let's say if one wants to start a consulting or a training or a service business, not a product or manufacturing kind of thing. So in that terms, where can they register as a proprietorship firm?
Again, shop establishment is okay for manufacturing and services, but you don't need in service side. Most of the places you don't need registration. You
Say, for
as an
example,
individual.
I'm a training firm.
So if you are a training firm and you need it, then shop establishment is good enough. In services side, the limit of GST without registration is 20 lakh rupees. In product side, it is 40 lakh rupees of turnover. If you are generating 20 lakh rupees of revenue in service segment, then you will be needing a GST registration.
And what are the annual charges that one has to bear?
Almost similar. So compliance burden is similar whether it is manufacturing or services. There is no difference much. The GST cost and accounting cost for any such enterprise happens 25 to 30,000 annual basis minimum. That is the cost. 25 to 30,000 of cost you have to incur for these kind of activities. But if you are not registered, then you may be able to incur it in 5 to 10,000 of cost in terms of running this business, such kind of business.
All right. Anyone has any other questions?
So already few questions were asked initially. I think when I closed the session, maybe they are short of those right now.
No, because all these terminologies are quite new for many of them, so I'm sure, but they got a lot of idea and insights out of it. Thank you so much, Jatin, for sparing all your time for us this evening. I'm sure we are really grateful for have you with us. Thank you once again.
Thank you for the opportunity and always there to support first generation women enterprises, student enterprises, anybody who's trying to venture out. There's not many who support, but I feel it's my moral obligation to support in
No,
that
I know
space.
you have been always an helping hand, and I would certainly reach out to you for a couple of things in next few
Sure,
days.
sure.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
you. Bye-bye. I request all the participants to complete the quiz and also the feedback. And tomorrow's session is quite important because we're going to talk about the format of the business plan and also how do we do the pitching of that business plan for the final session, which is there on 9th. So please start working on your plan. And I request each one of you to message me your preferred time slot for 9th of April when you would like to present. The time slot can be between 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. with your idea on which you're gonna work. So please do share that. You can send me a direct message about that. That will help. And so tomorrow I'm gonna share all those details with you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Else we'll see you tomorrow.
What we are going to have tomorrow?
Tomorrow I'll be sharing with you the format of business plan and also how to pitch when you are talking about your plan to the jury.
Okay.
So we'll do that
So
tomorrow.
initially, I wish I could not because of some internet connection. Initial 15 minutes. So he'll be
That's
sending
okay. You can
the.
always, yeah, we'll be sending you the recordings.
I
So no
just
issue.
wanted to know the good name of the CA.
He is CA Jatin Srivastava. He's based out of Lucknow.
He is in Lucknow.
Yeah.
Jatin Srivastava. Okay.
All
He
right.
explained things nice.
Yes, ma'am. What are you saying?
He explained things very nicely and.
Yeah. He's a very seasoned chartered accountant, and he has been working with a lot of investment bankers and startups. So I thought he could be the best person to talk about all these aspects.
For
Ma'am,
these small
whatever we have,
businesses, for these small businesses, this fundraising, you should know, you should be aware of these terms. But
Exactly.
basically, they are for the bigger businesses. For the, I think, initial stage businesses, you asked the questions and that he replied. So that
Yeah.
from our side, you asked the questions and he replied like a proprietor and other things. Some things we know. तो ये सब जो चीजें है ना बड़ी बड़ी बड़े बिजनेस वाले और इन्वेस्टर बेसिकली तो वो वाले हो गए वो जो उन्होंने कहा ना यू हैव टू टेक द लोन सारे के सारे आपका जो पहले होते थे ना
No, ma'am. See what happens. These small things are very important when we are saying that we want to register a company. What are the issues? What documents are required? We have these hitches. If you go to a chartered accountant, he'll ask you 10,000 to register a company, while you can do it on your own in 2,000 rupees, 1,000 rupees, Udyog Aadhaar. So I'll show you also a process on six. The faculty will show you how to register a company also. So these are like small things. If we can look at it and do it ourselves, we don't have to go out and spend these amount of money.
yeah Udyog Aadhaar I have also heard recently so this is
True.
important you should have an Aadhaar card as sort of registration in the Udyog Aadhaar.
So we'll do that. We'll do that. Yes, Dr. Reenu, tell me.
ma'am, I was just saying this thing that we do have an idea, right? But the thing is that to implement that idea and to execute all those things into a business plan, that is the most difficult part. Matlab, I have
I
gone through all of your session, right? But
Right.
the thing is, while attending the session, it seems, oh, okay, it's बहुत easy है, हो जाएगा. But the time you implement it, it's too
I completely
difficult.
understand. See, that's what we say. The beauty lies in execution. But guys, believe me, when you start putting up efforts and start solving these questions on piece of paper, you'll get more clarity whether you are supposed to do this business or not. Where do you get stuck? And if you know where you get stuck, you find ways to sort it out, right? So that is why we are doing these courses and programs so that your journey becomes little more better. Say if you take 4 years to grow your business, all those things you can do here using these tactics in 1 year of time. That's how it make your life journey shorter. That's the whole idea of, otherwise entrepreneurship is something which cannot be taught in a classroom, right? It's all practical. You need to go out in the field and experiment it. But using these tools and techniques and different things that we are talking about, it makes your life little simple and better. And I know finding answers to these questions are never easy. I mean, everybody says that, find your 100 customer. How do I find it is not easy. We have to figure out ways of doing it. But you have to start thinking and figuring out. That's the whole part of it.
Right, ma'am. But the thing is, what I was thinking about is that whatever I didn't met your expectations that you are expecting us to give a proper presentation on a business plan, or what if I end up only in having a business idea, not in, that idea is not able to execute in a proper manner. So what
Why you
if
think it's
end up
not
like
be?
this?
See, I'll tell you, no idea is a bad idea, right? Every idea is a business idea. Even if I tell you that,
Right.
you need to sell a coffin box is a business idea. The beauty lies in execution. So for that, you are going into the various stages. You had an idea, you evaluate that as an opportunity, you do some kind of market research and see whether it is feasible, come up with the financial planning. I look at it as this way, that whatever, whichever is was your business idea, at least during this part of the course, you understood the various ways of, converting this idea into a manageable document. So let's say tomorrow you want to work on some another business idea, you know what is the process that you have to go through,
Correct, correct,
right?
absolutely correct, ma'am.
So
Right, right.
think that
Yeah,
at the back of your mind and plan it accordingly.
yeah,
Okay, ma'am.
That is
I'll
what
you are
try
I
to
want
do
to
right.
that.
see. I
Two
want to see a full
stages.
business idea, plan.
So not only the finding
Sure,
the
ma'am. Sure, ma'am. I'll
100
try to achieve
customers, it is yeah, it is a challenge to find the proper human resource. It is a
Absolutely.
very big challenge here, because
Absolutely.
the morality as well as the professionalism is very less in the service sector.
Absolutely, you get all those kinds of problems, man. That's what I was saying that day. It's not very easy to figure out, okay, this is the right person for my job. But then that happens within the business jobs also. We do not find sometimes the right candidates, but some of the reasons we do not find the right candidate is we did not do the proper skill matching, we didn't have the right job descriptions, we didn't do the right homework before reaching out to the people. So we can't just blame the individual whom we have hired. Probably we have not done our homework properly, right? Like the automatic example that Jatin was talking today also, and I've shown you in the past also. So I mean, they did not really anticipate it. They made a product, but they did not thought about the cost. They said whatever they'll make, they will be able to sell it out in the market. They didn't realize that they are making it for a wrong audience. But then they said, we have now made it. Let's go to some other market. So they went to the international market, and there they found the taker for the product. But in India, they were not finding taker for a product, that who will buy a 1 lakh rupees roti maker. But they found, so they changed the market and it worked. So you need to apply your brain and figure out, okay, what can work, what can not work. And there is no right or wrong formula for it. You have to only try and test with it. So that is why looking at various models, frameworks will help you to understand what I can apply. So it is more requiring your time and inputs to give it a thought.
true,
So
ma'am.
don't
True,
worry
ma'am. We'll
about
try
it.
to
Absolutely
apply.
right.
Don't worry about that. What you have to do, assimilate all your things together. We got a session tomorrow where I'll tell you what are the aspects of business plan. Then we'll have a session on 6th, which is about legal aspects for business and how to register a company. And on 8th, I'll be taking a session where I'll be solving all your queries in terms of putting it into a final plan before you present it on 9th. Right? So
So
don't
there is a
worry.
class tomorrow and there is a class day after tomorrow also
You
on
have a
Sunday.
class on third, then 6th, and then 9th, 8th and 9th. Four more classes. 3, 6, 8, and 9. All right.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
fine.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, all these speakers and classes and interaction is definitely interesting. I'm liking it, and definitely you are filling the gaps wherever it is required. Thank you so much, Shinu,
My
ma'am.
pleasure. My pleasure, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Good. Banali, you want to ask something?
No, my question is that I have one business plan. Whatever I working last based on my experience, can
Mm-hmm.
I implement it? This is I am working as a freelancer, or I uh, the freelancer and entrepreneur is the same things or the
Yes,
different?
yes, absolutely. It's the same. For a freelancer, you are running a consulting company, right? You're doing consulting, right?
Yeah, consultants.
Yes, of course. You, why don't you convert it into a complete business plan and see where are the gaps, what you want to fulfill, how can you scale it up and take it to the next level? Let's say if you're earning 10 lakh rupees a year, how can you make it 20 lakhs a year? You know? that can become part of your business plan, and how do you elevate it through the process. That is important.
Okay.
Please go through that and do that.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, thank